morning. Welcome to Talk Indonesia, where we sit around and talk about what you're thinking out there. I'm Dalton Tanaraka. Here is this week's TI Hot List. Chinese cheers, why this Lunar New Year is more special than ever. Role models, who are the Chinese Indonesian leaders everyone looks up to? And Food Feast, what makes Chinese food the most popular cuisine in the world? Here every week with her sophisticated charm is Rahayu Saraswati, Sarah, actress, activist, and virgin ojek rider. And our guest host this day is Aimee Dawes from the University of Indonesia, a recognized scholar on Chinese in this community. Aimee, welcome. Hot topic number one, Chinese cheers. Now, it's never been better for Chinese Indonesians. When President Abdurrahman Wahid abolished the ban on Chinese displays of culture and traditions 12 years ago, there were more than sighs of relief. And when President Megawati established the Chinese New Year holiday 2 years later, the celebrating began and has never stopped. Now, I grew up in Hawaii where the Chinese community was one of the dominant ones, and we popped firecrackers every year, ate gao. I mean, what was it like here pre-2000? I mean, was everything really hidden? I have no concept of that.
Well, during the time when I was growing up, that was during the New Order era, 1965 to 1998. And so, of course, all forms of Chinese New Year.
So there was nothing?
We could celebrate it at home, but we couldn't see outward celebrations of Chinese New Year.
Whereas like a whole community actually celebrating something.
No fireworks,
with,
no
firecrackers, no fireworks, no, not at all. No, and it wasn't a national holiday. Chinese New Year was only made into a national holiday when Megawati made a national holiday in 2002. So, of course, some of my friends would actually take the day off from school to celebrate it at home. But my parents were very adamant about us not missing a day of school.
What book is that?
Yeah, Battle of the Tiger Mother by Amy Chua.
Okay.
Yeah, that one.
now, looking at it from a non-Chinese perspective,
right.
What did you think of it?
I mean, when I was growing up, I think it was just, I think, first of all, I was quite young when that was all happening here, and I went abroad in '98. So my memories of it was more. I had Chinese friends even growing up, but it wasn't really in my consciousness that they're not celebrating it out. I'm seeing it more towards the perspective of films. That's the way they celebrated it. But it's never occurred to me that they couldn't do it here, or it wasn't really a community.
Come on, you have to know that the law said you couldn't do it.
I think we've established this. I lived in a kind of dream world, back in the day.
Yeah.
98, I was living my own life. I didn't,
Okay, you mentioned 98. The memories of the riots of 98 still vivid for many Indonesians. Chinese were targets of violence and businesses destroyed. Looking back, I mean, without going through the whole history or chronology, how could this happen? For those of us from the international, looking in, how could this happen?
Well, there were a lot of theories behind 98, of course. But if you go back to 98 and a few years before that, there was a lot of economic unrest. And a lot of, if you go back even further in Indonesian history, for example, in 1965, when Sukarno was in power, and when actually he was disposed of his power in 1965, there was a lot of economic unrest during that time also. And during those times, the Chinese became the scapegoats. The scapegoats.
Because in '65 was the anti-communist, Chinese communists, and in '98 it was. You're saying '98 maybe was more an economic thing than an ethnic thing.
Well, the thing is...
Or both.
The thing is, during the Suharto era, the Chinese were not allowed to celebrate Chinese New Year. That's one of the reasons.
Right.
And all forms of Chinese culture and language was also banned. And they were not allowed to serve as civil servants, and they were not allowed to serve as part of the military, for example.
So basically not really recognized as a contributing members.
Or the full citizen of this
full
country.
Citizen of this country.
So now let's get back to the positive. Now everything's great because laws have changed. Anybody can do anything. Is that correct?
Well, I think there are a lot of positive changes in the post-1998 Reformasi or Reformation era, of course. And I think you already mentioned some of the milestones, like Gus Dur actually abolished the ban on Chinese culture and language. And in 2002, Megawati also made Chinese New Year as a public holiday. But also there are also other milestones, probably not very well known to the public. For example, in 2009, we have a new Chinese-Indonesian national hero. He's one of the people on your list, I believe, and he was actually the admiral, Chinese-Indonesian Navy admiral.
Okay, so a national hero. So things have come a long way, and so my original statement was things are better than ever for Chinese Indonesian. But one last question: what barriers remain? I mean, is it mindset besides the actual laws?
Perhaps it is mindset, because no matter what, especially for the older generation, we all know it's always difficult to change a mindset that's been there for when they were growing up. And then I think, other than that, I think it's just a matter of not just in terms of focusing on the Chinese Indonesians, but any ethnicity, there's
any
always
minority,
exactly
a religious
any
minority,
exactly any minority. There's always going to be friction in terms of the majority in any country.
But this country had a history with Chinese Indonesian. That's why we're talking about it today. Well, we're talking about the positive things as well. Just ahead on Talk Indo, there are leaders in every field with Chinese heritage, and we spotlight the role models.